Universal law of the universe. Our planet, Earth, Gaia, Tara, we live in an electromagnetic universe. Race, human. All mass of the universe falls into the final compression node, dodecahedron, because it enables perfected compression of all electromagnetic nodes. See Star Mother Kit visual online for reference. The Fibonacci sequence, a sequence that is measured in all aspects of life. Sequence pattern. Add the first two numbers in the sequence, which gives you the answer for the third number in the sequence. This sequence is also known as golden mean ratio. Fibonacci sequence series. Add two numbers in the sequence to get the next number in the sequence, or multiply any one number times 1.618 to get the next number in the sequence. Fibonacci sequence examples. Examples of nature following this sequence. Fibonacci sequence examples. Here is the breakdown illustration of how nature takes shape following this sequence. Fibonacci sequence examples visual breakdown.
One everyday example of this precision can be found in the plants. Many plants, including elm trees, grow their leaves, twigs and branches placed exactly halfway around the stem from each other. Next in the series are plants like the beech tree, with leaves placed 1/3 of the way round the stem from the previous leaves. Third in the series are the plants like the oak, with leaves placed at every 2/5 of a turn. The holly plant is the next at 3/8, while the larch trees are the next at 5/13, and the sequence goes on and on. Notice the number sequence of these fractions: 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, and so on. Each number is the sum of the two numbers which came just before it in the sequence. This particular mathematical pattern is called the Fibonacci series.
Take, for example, the sunflower. The display of its florets are in perfect spirals of 55, 34, and 21. The sequence of Fibonacci. The sequence of Fibonacci. The sequence of Fibonacci. The sequence of Fibonacci. The fruitlets of the pineapple create the same spiral based on the sequence. The pine cone does the same. As currents move through the ocean and the tide rolls onto the shore, the waves that bring in the tide curve into a spiral that can be mathematically diagrammed onto a plot at the points 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, and 55. Buds on trees, sand dollars, starfish, petals on flowers are formed with this exact same blueprint. This blueprint can be seen around us on a small scale every day, but the greatest example of all is directly above our heads. At an average of 100,000 light years across, even the spiral of the galaxies above us are formed with the exact design. This sequence, or blueprint, appears to be the trademark of a designer, a proof of a creator.
Also known as the golden mean, the divine proportion is a mathematical formulation exhibited in everything from the double helix of DNA.
The DNA molecule, the code for life, is made up of two intertwining spirals. We find the 0.618 ratio between the helix's width and cycle length.
To the form of the human body itself.
Do something like measure the distance from the floor to your navel, and then from your navel to your head. If you're well proportioned, the ratio should be 1 to 1.618, and that ratio is seen all over the beautiful body.
people started noticing it. Artists noticed it. The width of the mouth in a beautiful face, for example.
Yeah.
Not in any face, but it had to be beautiful. If a face was beautiful, the width of the mouth was exactly 1.618 times the width of the nose. If the face wasn't beautiful, that wasn't the case. Dentists, in their dental work, noticed that the upper front tooth was 1.618 times as wide as the next tooth over, the lateral incisor.
Oh.
So the central incisor was 1.618 times the width of the lateral incisor, the next tooth over.
Wonderful. Give me some more examples.
Your fingers, your fingers are each called phalanges, and each bone of the finger is called a phalanx. And the phalanx that's the closest to your knuckle here is 1.618 times the phalanx that's in the middle, and that's 1.618 times the length of the phalanx at the end, which is your fingernail. So that was kind of amazing. This number would come up over and over again.
Then we find the Fibonacci ratio in heart muscles, in bronchial tube branching, even in the electrical potential of neurons, and as Roger Penrose pointed out, even in the arrangement of the brain's microtubules.
As we scan our universe, from the tiny flower to the awe-inspiring galaxy, we see the fingerprint of God. We see the fingerprint of God.
You see how, everything's falling in the same direction. So when everything, all these conclusions point to the same direction, that it's covered up and hidden.
Fibonacci sequence examples. Fibonacci sequence spiral breakdown. The spiral of the Fibonacci sequence above is the key signature of all life, as it's the key geometry that enables perfected non-destructive charge collapse, as everything consists of electromagnetic charge, also known as energy, plasma. Understanding how this sequence enables charge, energy, plasma to infinitely compress, which is the definition of life force, infinite non-destructive charge collapse, allows one to see how everything is comprised of plasma, also known as energy, described as electromagnetic charge. As all of life pertains to being waves, known as frequency, known as sound, interconnected with light. Enabled by golden mean ratio, as it's the only way to stabilize those waves, as they converge non-destructively, because it's the only way energy, charge, plasma, can take shape in the geometry its frequency entails, as it's the only way energy, plasma, charge, can find a way out, and so, when those waves interfere constructively, they enable acceleration from compression of energy, plasma, charge, at center, known as Planck, in order to enter the Planck threshold, which tunes the energy, plasma, charge, into longitudinal EMF, known as gravity waves, known as life force, in order to enable infinite non-destructive charge collapse. Infinite wave sustainability. The term, key signature, is in reference to the geometry, the spiral and number sequence that take shape in this pattern. Shown in the example above, referred to as the Fibonacci sequence, formerly known also as golden mean ratio, generalized sequence. This geometry, the spiral, is the only way energy, charge, plasma, mass enables infinite non-destructive charge collapse, perfected compression, perfected embeddability, life force, as it's the only way waves can enter the Planck threshold, in order to be sustainable. Compression visuals. The rule is, if you fold a piece of paper of this size, Fibonacci example, demonstrated above, directly in half, you'd have space left over when trying to fold continuously the piece of paper. However, the Fibonacci generalized demonstration of the golden mean ratio sequence, the fold line is off-center, which allows this continuous fold of paper to have no overlap, allowing you to witness a cube embedding into a cube continuously, infinitely. This is the beginning of understanding perfected compression, perfected embeddability, 3D visual compression of Fibonacci sequence, golden mean. Fibonacci sequence, golden mean ratio infinite series breakdown. Here we are showing the breakdown of accuracy within this pattern sequence called the Fibonacci sequence. The Fibonacci sequence is a generalized measurement for demonstrating how life follows this mathematical pattern. However, figuring out the correct number sequence that allows the piece of paper to fold infinitely is the key to understanding infinite compression. And so, the measurement 0.618 is the perfected accurate measurement for perfected compression, perfected enfoldment, perfected embedment. Therefore, the perfected accurate number sequence for the Fibonacci sequence is 0.618, correctly known as the golden mean ratio sequence perfected infinite series, Fibonacci/golden mean ratio generalized number sequence, golden mean ratio infinite series perfected number sequence. Beginnings of understanding compression. This spiral from the Fibonacci sequence, illustrated in the example above, is referred to as golden mean ratio. This key signature, pattern, geometry, allows the transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, charge, to compress perfected, embeddability perfected, non-destructively. This is known as the key to all life forces, which is why life doesn't require charging stations to maintain existence. Life force is built to use universal law physics, which is enabled when transverse electromagnetic energy, mass, plasma, charge, encourages the ether. Definition of ether: superfluid, compressible substance, whose compression and rarefaction is charge, energy, plasma, transverse waves, encourages the transverse electromagnetic charge, plasma, energy, waves, inertia, definition of inertia. When momentum is applied, force is generated. In this case, continuous rotation creates continuous momentum and therefore force, which is the establishment of mass. In this case it's referred to stored electromagnetic energy, generated from continuous spin rate, to be drawn to its aura, charge field, by a process of what is known as becoming centripetal, spin alignment of torus, or a field, driving order, force towards center, measuring self from center, center referred to as Planck, also known as the ability to implode, as it is the only way those energy, plasma, transverse, charge, inertia, waves, can constructively converge, interfere, non-destructively, which only golden mean ratio allows. Enabled by tuning those transverse, ether, energy, plasma, charge, waves, to implode, becomes centripetal, because there is a way out at center, known as the Planck threshold, which enables the ability for those waves to find a way out, which is by becoming tuned into longitudinal waves, gravity waves, as longitudinal waves require the correct symmetrical phase discipline, environment for those charge, plasma, energy, transverse, inertia, waves, to find the correct squeeze, geometry, to enable implosion through center, enabled by centripetal force, enabling life force to take flight, which enables this infinite continuum of all life forces, organized matter, being their own self-sustained propagation, life force, enabled by being phase coherent, a shareable wave, with the rest of the universe, due to being centripetal. As everything in life pertains to being made of the same substance, known as plasma, energy, charge, enabled by transverse waves converging non-destructively, by becoming tuned into longitudinal, enabling infinite constructive wave sustainability. Once longitudinal waves have been established within this aura, charge field, this infinite continuum occurs within all torus, aura fields of all life forces, created by a process called phase conjugation, which is a process that enables those waves to converge, interfere, compress, non-destructively, demonstrated to our right, which demonstrates the translation of the transverse electromagnetic charge, waves, plasma, energy, ether, inertia, definition of inertia, stored electromagnetic energy, plasma, charge, generated from continuous spin rate, definition of mass, within all torus, aura fields, into longitudinal compression waves, gravity waves, by translating compression of transverse electromagnetic charge, waves, plasma, energy, ether, inertia, into acceleration, only in this geometry, which enables the transverse electromagnetic charge, waves, plasma, energy, ether, inertia, to find a way out, through center, known as Planck, center of torus, or a field, through being tuned into longitudinal compression waves, gravity waves, enabled by tuning all transverse electromagnetic charge, waves, plasma, energy, ether, inertia, to be centripetal, through the process called phase conjugation, demonstrated in the moving illustration to our right, which describes the precise geometrical, mathematical vortex that only golden mean ratio allows, to enable the correct translation of transverse electromagnetic charge, waves, plasma, energy, ether, inertia, to be tuned from compression into acceleration, in order to enter through the Planck threshold, which is in reference to the end of the golden mean spiral, key signature, vortex image, provided top right, demonstrated above. This acceleration is generated by multiples of golden mean ratio, as those waves converge closer towards to center, Planck threshold, enabling this cause of acceleration, in order to pass through center, known as Planck, as those wavelengths and phase velocities, spin rate, add and multiply, recursively, constructively, as they interfere with one another infinitely, known as constructive heterodyning, within all torus, aura fields of all life forces. In order for their transverse electromagnetic charge, waves, plasma, energy, ether, inertia, to find a way out, and so, those wavelengths and phase velocities, multiply by golden mean ratio, at the end of the phase, end of the golden mean spiral, to enable acceleration through center, to gain the correct velocity, of the torus, or a field, to enter the Planck threshold, which enables the transverse electromagnetic charge, waves, plasma, energy, ether, inertia, to be tuned into longitudinal compression, to enable the ability to disperse, across the nodal array of the universe, longitudinally, infinitely, which is how infinite non-destructive charge, energy, plasma, wave collapse, life force is established. Examples of golden mean ratio compressions. How transverse waves become centripetal/implode and therefore create longitudinal compression. Visuals on how energy creates blood cell structure. Now understanding all life follows this sequence, we can take a deeper look into the construction of the blood cell. This is an example of how the spiral, golden mean ratio, of the Fibonacci sequence creates the blood cell geometry, also known as the Holy Grail, an introduction into electromagnetic wave mechanics. Side view of blood cell, top-down view of blood cell. Blood cell caption. Visuals on how energy creates atomic/periodic shell structures. Now understanding all life follows this sequence, we can take a deeper look into the construction of the atomic/periodic table. Charge self-similarity perfected, enables perfected non-destructive charge collapse, known as fractality, as it enables self-reference, self-reflection, measuring self from center, known as Planck, which is the cause and mechanism of gravity, which is what holds all atoms of mass together. Famous chemist Moon, at University of Chicago, discovered that the geometry of the hadrons, the protons and neutrons, in the nucleus of an atom, provided to our right, demonstrates the list of all elements, with the list of all platonic nuclei, number of nuclear hadrons, protons and neutrons, for all to see. Example, at the top of the list, we have 2 for helium. The hadron symmetry they make is shown in the symmetry examples below, highlighted in yellow, as the hadrons, protons, neutrons, all nest inside the nucleus. Taking the geometry of tetrahedron, cube, octahedron, icosahedron, demonstrating the geometry, the symmetry of the hadron stake, in the nucleus, of the whole atomic table. Tetrahedron, cube, octahedron, icosahedron, because perfected embeddability, is charge self-similarity perfected, which is perfected non-destructive charge collapse, which is only possible being golden mean ratio. Tetra, octa, cube is actually one nest, because octahedron inside, is 2 tetrahedrons. Then outside of that, is a cube, so tetra, octa, cube is the same symmetry, from the point of view of wave mechanics. As everything is waves, which is frequency, which is combined with light. Formerly known as plasma/energy/charge. Visuals on how energy creates electron shell structures. Now understanding all life follows this sequence, we can take a deeper look into the construction of the electron shell structure. The entire atomic table is made simply of the interdigitation weaving of the s suborbital, p pi suborbital, d suborbital, f suborbital, s p d f suborbitals. So you interdigitate SSP, SPD, SPDF, you've got the whole atomic table. So if you know the shape of the SPDF subshells, you can suddenly visualize the shape of every electron shell. Here is the s suborbital geometry provided in the example to our right, which are the images of a teardrop/torus blue picture that looks like two teardrops, labeled A, provided by atomic chemistry. P, pi suborbital, is tetracubic, because in the example to our right, you can see that the 4 electrons, pointing out in a tetracubic array, referring to the black and blue cube image, labeled B, as we see the tetrahedron, inhabiting the cube, thus the name tetracubic. Next to this example, we have what a clairvoyant witnessed, for this same p pi suborbital geometry, the gray cube, image example, labeled C, and to the right, image labeled B, is the way current nuclear quantum physics visualizes the p pi suborbital, which is still cubic. D and F suborbitals are 10, 14 electrons. Remember the SPDF orbitals are 2, 6, 10, 14 electrons, which as pairs means 1, 3, 5, 7 vortex pairs, or 1, 3, 5, 7 spin symmetry pairs, and the 5, 7 spin symmetry pairs, making 10, 14 electrons, making the geometry icosahedron/dodecahedron and dodecahedron/icosahedron, which are the shapes of D and F suborbitals, shown in the example to our bottom right. Green image, labeled D, is D suborbital geometry, and the blue image, labeled E, is F suborbital geometry. So the entire atomic table's electron shell's symmetry is S suborbital, is a torus/teardrop, p pi suborbital, is a tetracube, D suborbital, is a icosahedron/dodecahedron, F suborbital, is a dodecahedron/icosahedron, which all fit inside each other. Perfected embeddability. Golden mean ratio. This is an example of how the spiral, golden mean ratio, of the Fibonacci sequence creates the entire electron shell structure. In this detailed example, we can see how each face of the hexahedron is assembled, which has 3 vortex pairs, 6 cones. First image, here we are shown illustrations on how the spiral of golden mean ratio creates the cube/hexahedron. In the third picture we can see how the golden mean ratio spiral makes the cone shape, which is replicated on all faces of the hexahedron, showing the breakdown of how the construction of geometry is assembled. Fibonacci sequence, golden mean ratio summary, brief summary of understanding. The sequence of the Fibonacci sequence is also known as the golden mean ratio, generalized sequence. However, the more accurate number sequence is defined as 0.618, perfected golden mean ratio sequence. This pattern holds a universal understanding, which is that life follows a direct pattern to this mathematical sequence, as it enables compression of electromagnetic energy, plasma, charge, which enables gravity, life force. Having witnessed the breakdown of how the structure of the blood cell and atomic table are assembled, which all derive from this geometry, spiral, pattern sequence, numbers sequence, golden mean ratio, Fibonacci sequence, which are the building blocks for all life, we can see that the Fibonacci golden mean ratio sequence enables perfected compression, due to perfected self-symmetry, which enables embeddability, which enables the translating, converting, of the transverse of electromagnetic energy, plasma, waves, charge, ether, inertia, into longitudinal electromagnetic energy, charge, plasma, waves, also known as scalar waves, however accurately known as longitudinal waves, also known as gravity waves. This will be expanded on, later on, meaning all life pertains to being a form of frequency, known as sound, measured as wavelengths, interconnected with light, formerly known as plasma, energy, electromagnetic charge, EMF, which in essence pertains to being transverse electromagnetic waves, charge, energy, plasma, inertia, which becomes self-sustained, by becoming centripetal, and thus producing longitudinal compression waves, at center, known as Planck, at the center of all gravity, aura, torus fields, in order for all of life forces to be self-sustained, in order to exist, only enabled by inhabiting this sequence pattern, golden mean ratio, which enables this to be so. Next we will be explaining how non-destructive charge collapse is the key to understanding what is gravity, Fibonacci/golden mean ratio generalized number sequence, golden mean ratio infinite series perfected number sequence. Compression examples. Now having understood that all life follows this sequence pattern at the atomic level and blood cell level, on the right are the geometries of all elements of the Earth. Each Platonic solid geometry is golden mean ratio, as its construction is of self-symmetry perfected. Therefore these geometries being golden mean ratio, means they are perfected in compressibility of charge, plasma, energy. Compressibility of charge, energy, plasma, is referred to as a fractal. Compressibility of charge, energy, plasma is the reason for how a different array of frequencies can inhabit the same space, without collision, explosion, due to it being directly linked, codified, with the term called perfected embeddability, because to embed, one must be able to compress, as everything is created of the same substance, known as plasma, energy, charge. Therefore in order for all life to coexist, within the same space, all geometries of all life, must pertain to being a construction of compression, which only golden mean ratio enables, which enables the ability for all plasma, energy, charge, frequencies, to inhabit the same space, without destruction, collision, due to embeddability. As it enables perfected compression, which enables perfected non-destructive charge collapse. See Mother Kit for a visual understanding on how all Platonic solids embed in the same space perfectly. Golden mean, compressibility and embeddability are two of the same term describing how life follows this pattern in order to exist. Mother Kit visual breakdown. Perfected compression, embeddability visual examples. Golden mean ratio, perfected compression learning mechanisms. Here on the far right you have what's called a jitterbug. This learning mechanism enables one to visually understand how Platonic solids compress in the same space, showing embeddability of different geometries, and how they can inhabit the same space, without collision, destruction, due to golden mean ratio, enabled by perfected self-similarity, which is how all life forces can inhabit the same space. The reason this needs to be understood is because the law in which the universe abides by is driven by this law, as it allows all types of geometries, frequencies, to inhabit the same space without destruction, as the universe is condemned to negentropy, self-organizing, self-replicating energy. Perfected compression, embeddability visual examples. causation of gravity fields, visuals. Here are examples of gravity fields, torus fields, aura fields. They are enabled only by following the universal law of perfected non-destructive charge collapse, also known as perfected charge distribution efficiency, life force, caused only by golden mean ratio, as it allows for all geometries, frequencies to exist in the same space. Due to perfected compression, perfected embeddability, as one must become sorted into center, in order to absorb longitudinal waves, in order for life to take flight, in the geometry its frequency entails, which enables this infinite continuum of longitudinal propagation, due to centripetal force, driving order from center, allowing all plasma, energy, charge to measure from center known as Planck, known as implosion, allowing energy, plasma, charge to find a way out, which enables the atoms of mass to hold together, known as gravity, torus, aura fields. First image, showing how the golden mean spiral constructs the makings of the cube. Second image, showing the gravitational field caused by this equilibrium. Note, the golden mean spiral noticed in all life, is also the same for the construction of the torus field, gravity field, aura field. Now, having seen how all mass of the universe inhabits this sequence pattern in order to exist, let's look deeper into the mechanism of what takes place at the center of this equilibrium of perfected non-destructive charge collapse, known as Planck, referring to the center of torus, gravity, aura fields. Because the mathematical key signature, referring to the golden mean spiral, is illustrated in all creation, from the building blocks of all mass and gravitational fields, enables the ability to unlock the answers to zero-point energy, anti-gravity, portals, astral travel, ensoulment, immortality, fractality. Beginnings of explaining causation of gravity fields. Now, having seen how all mass of the universe inhabits this sequence pattern in order to exist, here we are looking at the center of this equilibrium, torus field, or a field that holds the atoms of mass together, formerly known as gravity. This center of equilibrium is known as Planck. What is Planck? Pine cones kissing noses, is the shape of compression required in order to tune the inertia, charge rotation stored to Planck, time and length key signature exponents that meet by this equation, golden mean, that enables the critical escape velocity to go superluminal. First image. In this image you can see the torus, aura assembled above. To our left is a visual of how the golden mean spiral creates the shape, geometry, that enables perfected compression of transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, ether, charge, inertia, within the torus, aura field, whereby all transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, ether, charge, inertia, frequency, EMF, becomes sorted at center, through a process called phase conjugation, whereby all transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, ether, charge, inertia, become tuned to a contiguous musical key signature, called Planck length and Planck time. What is Planck? Planck is the wavelength, in which every wave that physics has ever measured, in both length and time, and so, transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, ether, charge, inertia become tuned into a superluminal, longitudinal, compression, infinitely, due to the sequence of golden mean being infinite. And so, the wavelengths and velocities, recursively constructively, interfere, infinitely, within the torus, aura field, whereby during this compression, referred to as phase conjugation, at the end of the golden mean spiral, you get acceleration towards center, towards Planck. Towards the end of the phase, spin position within the golden mean spiral of the phase conjugation, which enables transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, ether, charge, inertia to find a way out. By becoming tuned into a superluminal, longitudinal compression, tuning the entire universe to this universal wavelength, Planck time, and Planck length, referred to as mass, which enables this continuous infinite expansion, due to all life forces, mass being tuned to Planck, as it enables longitudinal compression, which all of the universe has in common. Perfected embeddability, self-similarity perfected, second image, as all life pertains to being transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, charge, waves, which becomes self-sustained, for all mass, life forces, enabled by the golden mean spiral, which is the geometry, within all torus, aura fields, gravity fields, phase conjugation, which enables the ability to tune all frequencies, transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, ether, charge, inertia, waves, into longitudinal EMF, life force. Only enabled by assimilating in a perfected construction, geometry we see here, known as a caduceus, or plasma vortex, which only golden mean ratio enables, whereby this shape, geometry only, allows those waves to constructively interfere, which perfectedly compress, tune all transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, ether, charge, inertia, waves, within all torus, aura, gravity fields, known as phase conjugation, into longitudinal compression, seeing how all transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, charge, mass, assimilates mathematically to this coherence of pattern, golden mean ratio. This does so because transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, charge, mass, absorbs the ether, which is described as a superfluid, known as plus and minus charge, energy, plasma, inertia, by becoming centripetal in its nature of order, fractal alignment, shareable wave, which enables the absorption of ether, longitudinal waves. By becoming ordered from center, centripetal, driving transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, ether, charge, inertia into center, known as implosion, which enables the spark that ignites this infinite continuum, becoming its own self-sustained, non-destructive charge collapse. Negentropy, self-organizing, life force, whereby within this infinite continuum, all torus, gravity, aura fields, have energy, plasma, charge, generating inertia which is stored electromagnetic energy, plasma, charge, generated from continuous spin rate of charge, plasma, energy, which is the definer of mass, releases some of that stored inertia, stored electromagnetic energy, plasma, charge, generated from continuous spin rate, in order for transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, ether, charge, inertia to find a way out. And so, some of this inertia becomes phase conjugated and tuned to Planck, which is enabled when some of that inertia is released into the top vortex of the torus, aura, gravity field, releasing some of that stored electromagnetic energy, plasma, charge from continuous spin rate, known as inertia, into center, known as Planck. Through a process of being tuned, made centripetal, through a process called phase conjugation, in order for transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, ether, charge, inertia, to pass through the Planck threshold, which is the musical key signature of the universe, whereby following the golden mean sequence, you'll find a mathematical number set that both time and mass, referred to as length, meet exactly. Thus the term Planck threshold for short, describing the connection both mass and time have in relation to reality, enabled only by this sequence, known as golden mean ratio. At the Planck threshold, you get acceleration towards center, as the phase velocities, momentum in which the wave travels in time, which is known as spin rate, multiplied by golden mean, times 1.618, and maximum wave heterodyning, layers of the wave formations, recursively constructively interfere, creating the ability for transverse electromagnetic energy, plasma, ether, charge, inertia, to find a way out, whereby it becomes tuned into a superluminal, longitudinal compression, enabling the ability to disperse amongst the nodal array of the universe, via the dodecahedron nodes of the universe, back to center. Because dodecahedron is the final compressional node, enabling ultimate compression, gravity diode, stabilization of gravity, as dodecahedron enables all other geometries to inhabit this space perfectly, perfected compression, which enables this continuous infinite process of plasma, energy, charge, known as life force. Here is a visual reference of what you'd see in this equilibrium of phase conjugation non-destructive charge collapse, infinite cascade. Gravity field waves, visuals. Now we are looking at the longitudinal waves caused by the pattern that life follows, called golden mean ratio. These waves travel perpendicularly, from the center of compression. The geometry in these two examples shows the coherence each one adheres to. One following this sequence, golden mean ratio, whereby we can see two alters of flow of electromagnetic energy. The left S electromagnetic flow is transverse and the right has the flow of longitudinal. Showing charge distribution efficiency, is caused by the geometry, dielectric constant, harmonics, the right side inhabits which is golden mean ratio. When the electromagnetic transverse waves, charge, ether, plasma, energy, inertia, is compressed into center, Planck threshold, the energy, charge, plasma, transverse waves are tuned into longitudinal waves, also known as scalar waves, accurately known as longitudinal, also known as gravity waves, whereby these waves are dispersed from center, perpendicular from compression, shown in example to our left and below, known as a phase shift. L-shift, referred to the word Elohim, as those waves of compression make an L-shape shift when entering the top vortex of the torus, or a field, which then becomes tuned to Planck into longitudinal compression, whereby those waves of compression travel out from center, perpendicular from compression, demonstrated by the arrows in the example below. Sacred geometry breakdown. Having understood that all life follows this sequence pattern, golden mean ratio, perfected non-destructive charge collapse, life force, gravity diode, in order to exist, as it enables electromagnetic energy, charge, plasma to be perfected, in distribution efficiency, life force, which is the beginnings of understanding how energy without wires works. We will explain this later on. Allow us to look deeper into the construction of sacred geometry, as they are patterns, geometries, frequencies that share the same common understanding, which is that life is condemned to negentropy, self-organizing, self-replicating energy, charge, plasma. The term sacred geometry derives from understanding the term fractal, as it refers to charge, energy, plasma distribution efficiency enabled, where the charge, energy, plasma, waves are distributed efficiently, because they're compressible, Perfected compressibility in physics is referred to as a fractal, which is enabled by self-symmetry perfected, which sacred geometry refers to, sacred space, where the little wave can survive without destructive interference, inside the bigger wave. And so, the term sacred means the presence of longer and longer wave coherence, which is what sacred space defines, the ability of that spark, of that charge, energy, plasma to unpack efficiently, longitudinal propagation, distribution efficiency, as it enables charge, energy, plasma to compress infinitely, known as life force, referred to as fractality, known as sacred geometry. This breakdown to our right allows one to visually see the makings of sacred geometry, whereby you have a multitude of patterns, geometries, all within equilibrium with one another, embeddability perfected, within this unified field of space they inhabit. These patterns of geometry draw electromagnetic energy, charge, plasma to become coherent, centripetal, implode within the organic field of space. As these geometries are all golden mean ratio, therefore enabling energy, plasma, charge, to become tuned to Planck, whereby at the atomic level, the DNA within this sacred geometry space will be restored to order, negentropy, due to the geometry driving increased order from center, centripetal force, negentropy perfected, due to its coherence of geometry being self-symmetry perfected, golden mean ratio, animation of compression, embeddability of golden mean geometry, showing the making of sacred geometry, fractality. Golden mean ratio, perfected compression. Golden mean ratio geometry, sacred geometry visuals. Here are examples of fractals, sacred geometry, for one to familiarize oneself with how nature takes shape in this sequence we call golden mean ratio, fractal, sacred geometry, self-symmetry perfected. As we are now beginning to understand the process energy, charge, plasma, mass takes, which all derive from Platonic solids, as they are golden mean ratio in their geometry, which are also the makings of the atomic and electron shell structures, which enables the assimilation of different compositions of geometry within this pattern sequence. Golden mean enables infinite forms of creation, as everything follows this rule in order to enable infinite non-destructive charge collapse, life force, fractal, sacred geometry examples. All Platonic solids compressed in one space, perfected embeddability, star mother kit visual. Fractal visuals in DNA. DNA responds to the sound photon coherence of your heart feeling bliss love. It is a phonon wave, mean sound liquid. The DNA braids within the braid, recursively, embedding, creating very long wave coherence in the DNA, when experiencing bliss, love. Geometry of DNA, golden mean. Visuals in architecture, explaining the difference between living material and dead material from a dielectric perspective. Example, when you hit a bell with a hammer, the ringing is called voltage. The longer it rings, the more dielectric constant it is. If it rings forever, it's a zero-point energy device, meaning it can propagate a weak charge field efficiently without dispensation of that charge field. Fractal architecture follows the same pattern, whereby it enables propagation of a weak charge field efficiently, allowing energy, transverse waves, charge, ether, plasma to compress perfectly, generating longitudinal waves/gravity waves aka life force. Fractal architecture examples: universe, galaxy architecture. Now, having seen how life manages to develop this sequence, golden mean, in a variety of ways, self-replicating, self-organizing, self-aware, here we're looking at the architecture, geometry of galaxies, universes. This is how all galaxies expand into the infinite expansion of all life, known as fractality, self-organizing, self-replicating energy. The form of how DNA is expressed is how all galaxies and universes travel, following the same sequence pattern. Golden mean ratio. This is a visual understanding of how all expansion of galaxies, stars, planets travel through the universe. Fractal architecture of our solar system, galaxy. Fractality in magnets. Now, having seen how life manages to develop this sequence, golden mean, in a variety of ways, self-replicating, self-organizing, self-aware, here are some examples of magnets, showing this same pattern. Plus charge, minus charge. Fractality architecture of perception. Now, having seen how life manages to develop this sequence, golden mean, in a variety of ways, self-replicating, self-organizing, self-aware. Here we are talking about our perception to reality, which is influenced by our awareness, consciousness. Our perception is dictated by our DNA braiding beliefs, which is a fractal composition tuned to the spin density, toroidal domain of space, dimension of reality, whereby due to the composition of one's DNA, geometry expression acts as an anchor to that form of perception of reality, as one's perception is configured by the vortex compression, translation that takes place into the eye, optical cortex, which are shown in examples to our right, showing the vortex compression of plasma, energy, charge collapse, that enables the translation of other forms of vortexes of plasma, energy, charge, that surrounds you, known as life, reality, which is revealed to you, based on the fractal composition of one's DNA, beliefs, is comprised to, which enables that spin density, toroidal domain, dimension, reality of perception, to be inhabited, which befalls that relationship of reality to you. This is in reference to a term called permission to touch. For example, when a child has their feet in the ground and is of pure intention, the child, if they decided to, could put a hole in the cloud above, by their intention of focus and coherence. Being a shareable wave, longitudinally enabled, allows the connection of the atomy of mediums of energy, charge, plasma, to bond together and grant the child access to the request. Making a hole in the cloud. This is the beginnings of understanding the connectivity of all energy, plasma, charge that one has within reality. This practice is also known as action at a distance. Perception is based on one's beliefs and DNA braiding, fractal composition, as this acts as an anchor to that spin density, dimension of space, dictating perception of reality, which can be increased by embedding into longitudinal coherence, by driving practices of enabling centripetal force, known as the bliss process, which braids your DNA, which allows one to enter higher forms of spin symmetry, toroidal domain, perception of reality, density. Fractality causes color. This example shows how color is made, which is via the phase angle of the torus of the photon, which is also known as an electron. Explanation provided below on how this process works in more detail. Fractality explained in language. Now, having seen how life manages to develop this sequence, golden mean, in a variety of ways, self-replicating, self-organizing, self-aware. In this example we can see how our language was created, which if you look closely, you'll see how the golden mean spiral within the torus, which from different phases, or angles, positions of the torus, the spiral is applied, creates the different letters of the alphabet. Learning the alphabet allows you to enter the fractal array, whereby to our right, we have the visual example of this understanding. Language was measured by tetrahedron geometry, as it's known as the most symmetrical of all geometries, as it's the constants of the energy, charge, plasma, we see as light, also known as fire. This is the beginning of understanding how the origin of all life derives from this sequence, which allows one to understand all aspects of life follow this rule, as it's the only way life can exist. Perfected, shareable wave, fractality, golden mean ratio. Fractality causes astral travel/lucid dreaming. In this example to our right, we are shown how our electromagnetic energy, charge, plasma, soul, compresses into the spiral, key signature geometry of golden mean ratio. This example shows us how we enter the dream state of awareness, also known as the astral realm. This will be further explained later on. For now, understanding the mechanism on how all life is driven by this coherence sequence pattern from matter, mass to the energy, plasma, charge that resides in it, known as soul, is key. Summary so far. Now, having witnessed all examples of how life comprises itself into the many levels of dexterity in order to exist, known as compressibility, embeddability, fractality, as it's the reason for how all transverse energy, charge, plasma, mass compresses the transverse electromagnetic waves, charge, plasma, ether, energy, inertia, stored electromagnetic energy, plasma, charge, from continuous spin rate, infinitely. Whereby due to this continuous build-up of stored energy, plasma, charge, the energy, charge, plasma, ether, inertia, transverse electromagnetic waves, must find a way out. Which takes place when sorting oneself into center, centripetal alignment, known as implosion, through a process called phase conjugation, which is a process that allows those wavelengths and phase velocities to add and multiply recursively, non-destructively, allowing those waves to enter a harmonic convergence, which interfere constructively, infinitely, in a ratio that is golden mean, in the geometry of a vortex, caduceus, golden mean spiral, which tunes the energy, charge, plasma, inertia, ether, transverse electromagnetic waves, to Planck, which is the musical key signature that enables the critical escape velocity, that enables the ability for the energy, plasma, ether, inertia, transverse electromagnetic charge, waves to go superluminal, propagate, into longitudinal compression waves, whereby we have this equilibrium of energy, charge, plasma, ether, inertia, transverse electromagnetic waves, becoming phase conjugated, in order to be tuned to Planck, center of torus/aura fields, allowing the energy, charge, plasma, ether, inertia, transverse electromagnetic waves, to find a way out, and therefore, able to disperse through the nodal array of the universe, longitudinally, back to center, infinitely. Known as longitudinal EMF, gravity waves, life force, which demonstrates self-organizing, self-awareness, consciousness, ensoulment for all plasma, energy, charge, which is the introduction to defining what a soul is, and the importance of this acknowledgement. So quickly refreshing one's mind, we have shown the breakdown of what is the Fibonacci sequence, which is the generalized sequence, compared to the perfected sequence, known as 0.618, which then reveals the pattern all life follows, called golden mean ratio, fractality, which allows energy, plasma, charge to compress infinitely, known as life force, which is witnessed at the blood cell level, to how your soul enters the astral realm, known as lucid dreaming. Fractality is the term used to describe ways in which life, nature follows this sequence referred to as golden mean ratio, through a pattern, geometry, which is of self-symmetry, self-organizing, self-replicating coherence of energy, plasma, charge, as it enables compression. Sacred geometry is the term to describe sacred space, which is the definition of charge distribution efficiency, perfected in compression, known as fractality, enabled by golden mean ratio, which is of self-organizing, self-replicating, self-symmetry, perfected, which enables propagation of longitudinal EMF, which is universally understood and witnessed, in how all forms of nature take shape, as it's the only way to enable perfected compression. See Star Mother Kit for a reminder. Next we will be going into detail on all areas shown here. When transverse electromagnetic waves converge/constructively interfere, they do so when waves form like a rose, known as implosion, compression, centripetal force. Golden mean ratio harmonic convergence allows those waves to compress into longitudinal. Time and mass explained. Now having seen all of life derives by this sequence, that everything is a fractal enabling infinite non-destructive charge collapse, life force. We will look at the breakdown of how life takes shape, within knowing that all life is energy, plasma, charge, whereby it takes all forms of mediums, which is all of creation. Which brings us to how time and mass are explained within an electromagnetic universe. This is understood when looking at the compression of energy, plasma, charge. As this spin orientation, vortex, Fibonacci, golden mean spiral, illustrated on the top left, is an example for showing how all energy, plasma, charge assimilates as mass. Which is that all mass is a continuous spin of charge, plasma, energy, which builds inertia, stored electromagnetic energy, from continuous spin rate, whereby at the center of compression, Planck threshold, creates the assimilation of mass, energy, plasma, charge based on its frequency, which enables mass to take the geometry, form to be. Time is explained as the spin rate, period of charge rotation, understanding that the spin rate of the universe dictates the spin rate of all spin symmetry, of all living things. As all life is a fractal rotating form of plasma, energy, charge, whereby depending how phase coherent, centripetal the spin symmetry, life force inhabits, dictates the spin rate of what the term age refers to. As depending how centripetal or centrifugal you are, enables the ability to become your own center of gravity, dissociating from the spin rate of the natural order of all spin symmetries, dictated by the spin rate of universe, enabling death or immortality. When one refers to what age are we in, you're asking what spin rate, period of charge rotation in all existence do we stand in? Mass is charge, plasma, energy stored from continuous spin rate, which is referred to as inertia. Time is spin rate, length, period of charge, plasma, energy of rotation. Charge rotation is the definer of mass and time. This is an example of how energy, plasma, charge, continuously spins, showing the energy, plasma, charge stored generating mass formerly known as inertia. The arrow in this example represents what time is, measuring the length or period of charge rotation. How long has the rotation been spinning for, is how time is explained. Visual example of mass. Visual example of time.